And I'm going to move on to some guys who have already gotten moved on from this offseason. We have eight head coaches already fired. And usually each year it's around 7.5 that get fired. The Raiders' interim head coach right now has the chance getting let go. That would count as a firing. Right now we're at 8. Has the possibility to get to 9 at 8 right now. And this is where I get back into moving away from defensive coaches in today's league. Once you look at the playoffs, we got Raiders, Bengals, Chiefs, Steelers, Bills, Patriots, 49ers, Dallas, Rams, Cardinals, all the teams. 7 out of the 10 teams are offensive-minded coach teams. We're moving away from the defensive way of things. Now, Vic Fangio was fired, defensive-minded head coach. Zimmer was defensive-minded head coach. He got stuck in his way. Him and both the GM were fired. I think Minnesota is an absolute great team, and if they go in there with the right head coach, they could be in the playoffs next year. I'm very happy personally that Nagy and Pace got fired, even though it's the Bears. That Nagy and Pace they weren't good for the franchise. Finally, the Bears get to move on, hopefully find their replacement. You guys got to remember, when GMs and coaches are both fired and the Vikings and the Bears situation, give them a year for one, but for two, a coach cannot even get hired until those teams have a GM hired, because it's the GM's job to hire a coach. So you got to have some leeway there, but both the Vikings and the Bears have great opportunities here. I think the Vikings are the most enticing team around the whole NFL to go to this offseason if I was a coach, just because how great their roster is. Minnesota has a great roster. It's talented. And except for Kirk Cousins with his contract, they're not screwed on cap space, and there's plenty of stuff you could do there. Now, one of the other big firings from this week was Flores. Brian Flores was fired from the Miami Dolphins, and Miami is now turning into a joke of a franchise. I'm fully shocked by this firing, except for that it came out of Miami. When I started this podcast, I was talking about Miami, the life around Miami, how much reporting there is, and it's kind of a different football team than there is in some other areas, like Patriots, just for example, the Patriots. I know how good of a system they have, but just as an example. It's a different culture, different environment, and now Miami's sinking farther. And in my opinion, this is the best thing that could have happened for Brian Flores. He was never going to become a great coach with Tua, and he was stuck with him. I personally wanted, like when Tua came out, I was all over Tua. Also, I didn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks that much then. I was all over Tua. And when they drafted Tua, Flores, there were reports came out about this, Flores wanted Justin Herbert. And the GM, who could keep screwing things up for Miami, went against him. Chris Greer, the GM, took Tua, not Flores. Then after I found out it was Chris Greer, I went and looked at Chris Greer's resume. From 2007 to 2015, he was messing up the scouting department for the Dolphins. He was the lead scouting director for the Dolphins for upcoming college players. And for the last 5 years, he has been messing up the whole franchise at general manager. Back-to-back winning seasons Brian Flores had with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua as his quarterbacks. And now Brian Flores has all the options in the world, and that's why this is great for Brian Flores. He should go. He should take a month-long vacation, go to a beach somewhere. He needs to be patient, and he's going to find a great spot for him. Hell, he might end up in Minnesota. And I would, as a Packers fan, Brian Flores ends up in Minnesota, I'm worried. And Flores will be one of the best coaches in the NFL in the next 2 to 3 years. Mark my words. In the last 2 years, he's won 19 games. Only 9 teams have a higher win percentage than the Dolphins over the last 2 seasons. Win percentage 0.576. And he's definitely just not going to be out of coaching for long. This is a great opportunity for him to upgrade himself. And Miami has been obviously mismanaged, but I promise you other teams are going to look at what Flores did and want him immediately. And everybody that looks at NFL on a serious note, the Miami Dolphins are turning into a joke. Things need to turn around for them. There was no reason for Brian Flores to be fired. That was the one highlight. The streak that they went on at the end of the season, that 10-game streak, they went 9-1, barely missed the postseason with Tua. Remember what the Dolphins GM put Tua through earlier this season. And all through the offseason, stuff kept getting sprinkled about, maybe we'll get Deshaun Watson. And that played into the media I was talking about in Miami. Stuff kept getting sprinkled in there. We might trade for Deshaun Watson. We're interested in Deshaun Watson. And Tua's confidence got tanked. They ended up going like 1-7. Finally, they say, we're not trading for him. Look what happens. They went on like a 9-1 streak. I think they were like 1-6. They went on a 9-1 streak. They did great. Flores is fired, and they're going to sink farther. Everybody should want to get out of Miami immediately. They're on the downwards. Some other teams are on the upwards. We'll see where we're going. Pete Carroll is also, I expect, to be fired. I hope Pete Carroll is fired from the Seahawks. They need to keep Russ over Pete. Pete has been stuck in his ways for so long. He's one of those defensive-minded head coaches. It worked for a couple years. Then they sold everything out, and they've been struggling with cap for years. Haven't gotten the playmakers they wanted. He's taken the ball away from Russ. They need to keep Russ and let Pete Carroll walk. And there's 2 other head coaches that got fired. One of the other big ones, Joe Judge. I'm going to start with this. What he did for his colleagues, he bought, if you guys didn't see, Joe Judge, after he and basically all of his coaching staff got fired, he bought a ton of pizza, bought a ton of beer, invited everybody over to his house, and they had a little get together and they had a good time. Guys are going to remember that. That speaks a lot about Joe Judge's character. And if you remember when Joe Judge got up there for the first time ever for his press conference, he was a very well-spoken guy. And no one had ever heard of him, but they were like, wow, Joe Judge can speak well. He seems like a good guy. And now getting into his actual resume, it has been an absolute clown show for the New York Giants. It was his way or the highway. And the Giants are an absolutely historical franchise. They're great. And in the last 6 years, they have been a complete coaching carousel. It's great that David Gettleman got fired so they can have a new guy. This can be another one of those things where they have to hire a GM before they can hire a coach. And the Giants have always been great. This is not good for their franchise. Judge, as a new head coach, was in over his head coming into the New York Giants. And that's not a knock against Joe Judge. He was a new head coach, and I fully believe Joe Judge could be a good head coach in other scenarios. He needs to go back to the Patriots or go to another team, be a defensive coordinator for a year, be an outfit, whatever, and evaluate himself. What did I do wrong? What are these guys doing right? And that'll change a lot for Judge. And their New York Giants front office needs to stop screwing up. A lot of people don't know this. The New York Giants are already over on cap space for next season. Now, some other teams are. The Packers are, I believe the Titans are, Cardinals are, Rams are. They're all in the playoffs except for the Saints. Saints were right there at it. Giants were a train wreck this season, and somehow Dave Gettleman messed them up so bad that they have no money to spend. How is that possible? It should help with the firing of Gettleman, but this is nothing but chaos at this point, and it's gotten a fight. Like, fight with an offensive line coach. They have the worst O-line in the league. Joe Judge was in over his head and was a complete clown show this season. It was just not good. And then the last head coach to be fired, David Culley. This is one of the other ones that I fully do not understand. Last season with Deshaun Watson, the Texans were 4-12. Deshaun Watson played great ball. They had J.J. Watt. They had a way better team than this year. And David Culley comes in this year. He potentially finds the Texans their future QB in Davis Mills. David Culley grinded the whole year. The Texans kept putting up fight for David Culley. And it's only been 1 year. How are you just going to keep continuously? The Texans are turning into a worse joke than the Dolphins are turning into. Jack Easterby, joke. Firing of David Culley, joke. It's terrible. Handling of all the situations with J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins, joke. It's been very bad for the Texans, and it's just going to keep getting worse. If you can't even keep a coach for 1 year after he does bad, but shows you improvement, there's nothing you can do. Like, it's over.